Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me tonight, Polly Mackenzie and Alex Dean. And Polly, we're going to turn inside the Times next, and a really touching story here about a widower. Talk us through it.
Well, it starts with a very sad story about a gentleman who lost his wife and tried desperately to make new friends and new connections. He advertised in the local paper. He handed out 23 business cards he'd got printed to try and find somebody to talk to because he was so crushingly lonely. And what's pictured here is he eventually just put up a sign in his window asking for people to befriend him. And finally, he's been deluged by support, warm, and, you know, he's had a call from Esther Ranson, which is surely most people's life goal. And it's been great to see people around the world sending him cards and letters and getting in touch with him. I think it's the one sort of silver lining of this coronavirus hell that we've just been talking about, is that people have connected more with their communities. You know, with some research we've done suggests about 5 million people have got a new friend in their neighbourhood that they didn't have before this. And this is just one example of how important that is.
Indeed. And I think Kay Burley interviewed him earlier in the week, and I've watched it. It was a very, very moving interview. Seemed like a really lovely guy. Let's move on, Alex, to a story on the front of the Financial Times next. And this is about kind of virtual reality taking a whole different application.
At some point, we've all thought, those of us who work in the city, that traders have got to come back, because it's incredibly difficult to mount trading virtually. Much depends on signals, on gestures, at least in the open outcry ring of the LME. But even if it's not an open outcry kind of ring, even if it's just being in the building, your ability to talk to people in real time, instant messenger and so forth, the closeness of traders physically has been a core part of the discipline. And now it seems, and this is a reason I picked it, it's a real sign of the way the city may go. If you can have a VR on and it looks like you're in your trading area, then maybe you can do it from your living room. And one of the reasons that we thought people might be corralled to come back to Square Mile, saving bars and sandwich shops right across it, may not actually come to fruition.
OK, one to watch, certainly. We are out of time, but Alex and Polly, always good to see you both. Thanks very much indeed for taking us through the papers.
Thank you.
Well, let's get a check on the weather now.
Get ready for safe skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It looks as though this dry and sunny spell of weather is set to last for many of us through the weekend. Parts of the south will have a breezy and cloudy start to Saturday, while lighter winds further north will have allowed some fog patches to form overnight. Any fog patches will lift to leave most places dry on Saturday with long sunny spells, and it will feel warm out of the brisk easterly wind across the south. Thicker cloud across southwest England and the Channel Islands may bring some showers. Cloudier skies will affect southern England, the far north of Scotland and some North Sea coasts, with the odd spot of drizzle for parts of Scotland. Showers in the south will clear early on Sunday to leave a fine and dry day for most. It will be cloudier in the north and windy in the south.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Still ahead at the top of the hour, the start of a new second wave leaves the Prime Minister to consider a second national lockdown as the number of COVID infections continues to rise.
Underfloor heating systems, I'm not even sure where to start with this, so tell you what, let's start with a bit of instant gratification. Polypipe, power, valve, pump, boiler, LEDs, polypipe, 4 LEDs to indicate zones. Whip the covers off. I'm going to reverse engineering these circuit boards. I'm going to take them out and I'm going to basically reverse engineer and draw this schematic just to see how this all works. But to start off, we have to understand what it does in the first place. So, underfloor heating is fairly popular in the UK. Sometimes you have radiators upstairs, sometimes if you've got a solid floor downstairs, you'll have the underfloor heating. And the underfloor heating is basically, it's a layer of insulation, then a support for pipes, and the pipes are zigzagged under the floor. And they come to a manifold, and then the whole lot is screeded across, and then carpet and everything put on. You end up with just the whole floor heats, and it's quite nice, I have to say. It is pleasant walking those floors. But they're often integrated in to what's called an S-plan system. So here's the boiler in the house. Let's zoom down this a little bit, because once I've explained this, the other stuff in these modules will become more obvious. So we have the boiler and its pump. And we have a common control line going to all these valves, and each of these valves has a switch in it, so that when the valve is open, it hits the switch, and that provides control. It says to the boiler that something's calling for water. So say, for instance, the hot water tank was getting cool. The thermostat switches the valve on. The valve runs to the open position, hits the switch, sends a signal back to the boiler. The pump runs, and because that valve is open, the water will actually pass through the hot water heater. If other zones also call for water at the same time, it will just be shared. It will find its way through them all. The difference with the underfloor heating is they don't just run the water straight through the underfloor heating hose. It actually continually gets circulated by its own pump, and there's a mixer to regulate the temperature. So it only pulls in hot water as needed. And the boiler, it's not too bothered about that because it's still passing water through the system. But the boiler, once it reaches its set temperature, it will just, it will still be pumping water, but it will just go into sort of standby until it's more heat's called for. So the point of these units is that this controls everything for the underfloor heating. It controls the pump, it controls the valve, and the wiring then facilitates sending that signal back to the boiler. Okay, I have to say, I got a bit of a baptism of fire with these. I wasn't really that interested in underfloor central heating until an elderly friend said, could you come and take a look at our heating because it stopped working? And I thought, oh, that'll be easy. It'll just be a valve or a switch or something like that. And I went out, and her husband, who was quite elderly, had been doing a DIY project, and he was remodeling a walk-in cupboard. And the cupboard had some old heating stuff in the wall that was part of the old heating system, he presumed. And it turned out, no, it wasn't. It was actually part of their new heating system. So it had the manifold, it had the pump, it had the valves, and he just, without turning the power off or anything, said, well, that's not needed anymore. So he chopped all the wire off the pump and off the valves, and then he took the cover off this and chopped all the wires off this, and then he took this off the wall and he threw it in the bin. And that's the point their heating stopped working. He didn't just do that. All the cables still live. I presume it must have tripped a breaker. He poked them through the plasterboard and through the floorboard, so there was nothing there. And that included breaking this control line so that none of the heating in that area of the house worked anymore. So I got out there, and it was instant regret. I regret actually saying I'd take a look at the heating for them. I did not realise what he'd done.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. Today we got an interesting bit of kit, industrial oddware. Oh, that? Never you mind. This is a new perch for Duclaw's pilot house. He plumb wore the other one, cleaning out. Oh, God. Sad state of affairs here. Rusting my pipes. Yeah. So this is a wax motor. You heard that right. It's a wax motor. It actuates using wax. I try not to be alarmed, but I'm going to come at this in reverse here on account of chances are when I get a ray part, it'll be completely fuckered. So I'm actually going to actuate this. We'll show you how it works. It looks like a solenoid valve for all the world. It's even got the two little leads there. It is not a solenoid valve. It is a linear actuator what uses paraffin wax as the motivator. It's devilishly simple in its design. It has extremely high forces. We're going to whop the power to her and I'll show you how it works. Okay, we got the dick in the vise. This is not the valve, it is the valve actuator. This would be attached to a normally closed little valve with a poppet on the end, and that would be, say, a mixing valve or some sort of valve for a radiator or heat exchanger, possibly hot water or some other high thermal mass heat transfer fluid, let's say ethylene glycol or something like that. And essentially what happens is we put power into here. It heats up a little 2-watt heating element. This is 240 volts. I'm not going to feed it 240, just going to feed it, say, 60 volts. It'll still get there in the end, and then I'll stick this in here just as a flag to see what is going on. Now, the reason I even have my dirty dick beaters around this, thank you for the scrap bin fines, but also, you know, that the lonesome ladies of the internet, the fetish with the open and jar routine, that modeling gig is only going to last so long. So I gotta look down the road, and I was thinking, what is an easy way to have something that follows the sun? I got some solar panels I'm setting up there. What easily follows the sun without too much control system, or, you know, want to get away from the Arduino in this? What about a wax motor that when it's in the sun, the wax heats up and expands it? So you would set it up so that when the panel is dead aligned with the sun, this is not getting any heat, and then when it comes away from alignment of the sun, this gets heat, expands, and moves the panel back in. So a very simple control system, and it finds its natural balance. There'd be a lot of dicking around, but that's the essential idea, is that instead of having a motor, you have a wax motor. And of course, one wax motor, because it's so high force, could move a hell of a lot of panels. That's the idea anyway. Just sort of dicking around. But these are really interesting, and they're really only used in HVAC, in heating and ventilation. So we're going to turn the power supplies on here. Well, we turned one on. I got to do some troubleshooting. Okay, got the power supplies seriesed up. That means we got 30 volts there, we got 30 volts there. That means we got 60 volts. We should be drawing, well, 240, you know, we should be drawing half a watt. But, well, hopefully it actuates. Now this has all the appeal of watching your buddies get drunk. I'll explain how this works, and it has to do with the amazing property of paraffin. Paraffin is a nonpolar hydrocarbon. So it's not like water that has different poles. It's nonpolar.